Okay, so we're going to have a look at Majjhima Nikaya 48, the mendicants of Kosambi, the Kosambiyasutta. And this sutta fits into a larger narrative. The argument at Kosambi, very famous argument where the Sangha was split, and the very famous Upakilesa Sutta, which is based around the same events as this particular sutta. And so when the mendicants split, then the Buddha gives some special teachings to bring the mendicants, the monastics, the monks. The nuns don't feature, only the monks. The monks are arguing, maybe the nuns were peaceful, I don't know. And so we're going to see what the Buddha says when the monks are arguing like this. So Middle Length Sayings number 48, Kosambiyasutta. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Kosambi in Gosita's monastery here. Kosambi is on the south bank of the river Ganges, so just where the rivers Yamuna and Ganges kind of merge, two of these enormous rivers coming together. It's a little bit to the east of the normal places of the Ganges plain, so it's east of Varanasi and east of the other places, west of the other places. So in other words, all right. Now at that time the mendicants of Kosambi were arguing, quarreling and disputing, continually wounding each other with barbed words. They couldn't persuade each other or be persuaded, nor could they convince each other or be convinced. And they were arguing about some minor Vinaya issues. Usually this is kind of where often monastics argue, and the smaller the issue, the greater the argument. You know what it's like sometimes? The big things, okay, you kind of don't worry about them, but the smaller the argument, smaller the issue. And it's like you argue with the people who are closest to you, but you don't argue with those people who are too different. Yeah, you don't argue with people of other religions. You don't even argue with Mahayana, but you argue within Theravada. That's where you argue. That's usually how it goes. So they were arguing and they were wounding each other with barbed words. What is it? Mukha sate, the swords of the mouth, is the Pali word. Mukha satta, the sword or the knives of the mouth. You use your words in an unskillful way. But the argument carried on. They couldn't convince each other. Then the mendicant went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and told him what was happening here. So the Buddha addressed one of the monks, "Please, monk, in my name, tell those mendicants that the teacher summons them." They'll be summoned by the Buddha. Yes, sir, that monk replied. He went to those monks and said, "Venerables, the teacher summons you." "Yes, Reverend," those monks replied. They went to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side. The Buddha said to them, "Is it really true, mendicants, that you have been arguing, quarreling, disputing, continually wounding each other with barbed words, and that you can't persuade each other or be persuaded, nor can you convince each other or be convinced?" "Yes, sir," they said. So the Buddha always begins by asking whether it's really true. This is kind of a standard practice. There's no assumptions. You hear from the other side as well of the argument to ensure that no, this is not just a rumor or something other going on. What do you think, mendicants? When you are arguing, quarreling and disputing, continually wounding each other with barbed words, are you treating your spiritual companions with kindness by way of body, speech and mind, both in public and in private? So what happens when you are arguing with each other, when you are in disharmony, when things are not working, bad things happen. You go against the Dhamma. You go against the purpose of the monastic life. The purpose of the monastic life is not to argue about some tiny, minor Vinaya matter. The Vinaya matter, according to the commentaries that give rise to this, you may know this already, was in the toilets. They had little kind of water jugs, and someone forgot to empty the water jug after using the toilet. Wow, that led to a massive argument, because they were saying that is an offense. Yeah, you can't leave water in the jug after you use the toilet. You have to empty it out. You haven't committed an offense. No, I haven't committed an offense. Yes, you have. No, I haven't. And then they argue like this back and forth. That was supposed to be what happened. And it's getting the priorities wrong. The priorities is moving forward on the path. The purpose of the Vinaya is to help you practice right. If the Vinaya leads to bad practice, then it is counterproductive. This is such an important point. The same thing with the rules for lay people. It's the purpose of the rules is actually to be able to practice well, to live with kindness, do all the right things. The purpose is not to argue about, what, are you eating cheese in the afternoon? That's terrible. You are an evil person. That is the wrong way. It doesn't help. Cheese, whether you have cheese or not, is a small matter. But if you start arguing, well, then that small matter becomes a big matter, and then you destroy the purpose for whether it is for having cheese or not having cheese. That purpose is destroyed in the process. So, are you treating your companions with kindness by way of body, speech, and mind? Yes, you see here the idea of metta. Metta is the word here, the kindness. And by body, by our actions, by speech, and by mind, both in public and in private. In other words, all the time, within every possible way. This is the importance of this. This is how you purify your sila fully. It's profound, it's deep, it is broad, it includes everything. There is nothing really outside of it. Then you are doing your practice rightly here. So it is a major commitment. And then they answer, what do you think they say? They say, no, sir. We can't argue and be kind at the same time. We lose our kindness when we argue. They probably feel a bit sheepish at this point. They feel, okay, what is the Buddha going to say now? So it seems that when you're arguing, you're not treating each other with kindness. So what exactly do you know and see, you futile men, that you behave in such a way? This will be for your lasting harm and suffering. Mogapurisa, you silly men, you futile men. What is it that you see? Have you seen something profound that means that you should be acting like this? And of course the answer is no. You have lost sight. You have done the opposite of seeing. You have entered the non-seeing and the non-knowing. And then you end up doing things that are actually bad for everyone, long-term harm and suffering. So it's very easy to get distracted. It's very easy to lose sight of what really is important. And this always comes from, sense of self, from defilements and these kind of things. And once those defilements lodge in the mind, it's actually very hard to get out of them and to see clearly. So this is what is so hard. So this is why that commitment and perseverance is so important, because there are so many facets inside of us that want to pull us in a different direction. They want to destroy that ability. And so we have to commit really firmly to be able to see through that distortion, that bias of the defilements and the self that want to pull you in a different way. This is why it is hard, because you have to go against your habits. Your habits is the thing here that stops you from doing these things, and that is hard to go against our habits. Very often, when you get questions in the evening on retreats like this, people will say, oh, my son is not doing the right thing, playing too much video games, or my parents don't understand the Dhamma, how can I convince my parents, or whatever, my husband or wife or friends or colleagues at work or whatever. All of these people, how can I convince them? But that's the wrong question. You should ask yourself, how can you convince yourself? That is the real question, because that is already plenty hard enough, let alone convincing others. How can you be convinced of getting out of your habits? How can you be convinced of changing your ways? Yeah? And when you know how difficult it is to change your ways, it is hard, right? It's really difficult to change your ways. We like to follow down the same old tracks, the tracks that have been worn really deeply, so you get railroaded along without having to move too much this way or that way. Changing is hard. And so when we know how change it is hard ourselves, how hard it is to change ourselves, I don't know what I'm saying anymore, then we don't ask other people to change. Instead, we have compassion for them because we know precisely how difficult it is. We understand that in many ways they are trapped in where they are, and that's why they have a big problem. And so we look for change in ourselves instead. And very often that will solve also the other problems, because then we don't look so much at others, and if you don't look at them, well, that solves the problem. Partly, depending on how you think about it. So there you are. So that is what's going on here, yeah? And so then the Buddha goes into a detailed analysis of this to explain how this works. Look at this, I have 3 drinks. Buddha Dhamma Sangha. It's nice. What? No, this is kind of, it's all to help the Dhamma, right? It's a positive thing, yeah. Okay. Yeah, sometimes you don't know, do you? It could be one or the other, so it's true. Anyway, so this is kind of one of the benefits of being a monk. Look at how kind people are to you. They look after you in all of these ways. Isn't that amazing? This, I don't know. It's kind of remarkable. So, what does the Buddha have to say about this? Then the Buddha said to those mendicants, mendicants, these 6 warm-hearted qualities make for fondness and respect, conducing to inclusion, harmony, unity, without quarreling. What 6? Yeah, the idea here is that you're supposed to have a warm heart. I'm not sure if the Pali word exactly is a warm heart. I can't remember the Pali word now. I haven't got it in front of me. Whatever. It leads to 2 things: fondness and respect, affection and respect. Yeah, having a sense of feeling dear to each other. That's kind of the idea here. And not just dear, but dear in a respectful kind of way, a way where you treat each other in a way where you see the value in the other person, so respectfully. So this is kind of a nice way of thinking about how to treat other people. Yeah, affection and respect kind of together. It's a very beautiful way of 2 kind of very nice qualities of seeing in other people. And if you treat people like that, with affection and respect, then that does lead to inclusion, harmony, and unity. That's what it leads to, because then we feel valued by others. We feel that others are fair. We can see the kindness in the way they treat us. And of course, that becomes the very glue that holds us together in the community. So it comes from this. And so this should be the priority. The priority should not be to be right in an argument. The priority should not be to win the argument, but the priority should be to have respect for each other and fondness for each other. That is the right way. But too often the sense of self, the ego gets in the way. The ego wants to be right. And so very often we have to put that ego to one side. Forget that ego. It doesn't matter if you're right or not. And very often, even if you are right in a narrow sense, very often it is not about being right or wrong. It is more about, very often, if you're working on a committee, which committee member is right, should you go that way or should you go this way? Often more important than going that way or that way is how we implement our decisions. And if we implement the decisions with harmony, we're working together, it often becomes a better solution than the solution that on paper was better in the first place. And so this kind of makes things turn out well when we work in harmony in this way. Have you got the Pali words there in the word? Did you look it up? Saraniya. Okay, so that's the Saraniya qualities. Okay, yeah, okay, good. Yeah. So Yeah, saraniya is the kind of thing that when you meet and you have you talk to each other friendly way. It's the same kind of thing. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so now what are these 6 qualities then that bring this sense of unity and harmony together? We don't argue with each other over insignificant things. They are as follows. Firstly, a mendicant consistently treats their spiritual companions with bodily kindness, both in public and in private. This warm-hearted quality makes for fondness and respect, conducing to inclusion, harmony, unity, without quarreling. So you treat this is to the monastics, but you can say the same things in lay life, of course. You treat your spiritual companions, first of all, consistently. Yeah, that's obviously an important point here. You are consistent in this. It is not kind of occasionally when you feel like it, but even if you don't feel like it, you should treat them with bodily kindness. That is where it is difficult, but that is also where you are changing yourself in a profound way, because by not allowing those habits to carry on, and this is what you do when you are consistent with kindness, you don't allow the bad habits to come out. You restrain those bad habits. You have to rethink the situation. You have to look at the person in a new way. Yeah, that's the only way you can be consistent with these things, because you're not always going to feel like being kind. Sometimes you're going to feel like being unkind. Yeah, but still, you should be kind, even if you feel like you don't feel like that. So consistency is a very important point here. And then you will notice it's about spiritual companions. It doesn't say about anyone else. So I'm a monk, my spiritual companions are my fellow monastics, so I should treat the 2 nuns over here with kindness. I don't have to treat anyone else here with kindness. So what is going on here? Well, first of all, what is going on is that actually you are kind of my spiritual companion, so I guess I have to treat you with kindness as well, so you can breathe a sigh of relief. You're going to be okay. But the point is that there's many points with this, but the most important people are the ones who are our companions. And so we should kind of emphasize kindness towards those who are closest to us. And often the people who are closest to us are also the most difficult to be consistently kind towards. Like your family members, right? It can be hard to be consistently kind within the family. The people we love the most are the people we have a lot of happy times with, but also the people we kind of argue with sometimes. Yeah, this is kind of the nature of family life, because we are so close together. We rub up against each other. And so that is why that is a kind of very training ground. Yeah, the family to always treat your family members consistently with kindness is hard and difficult, and that's why it is a good training ground. The same thing in the monastery. In the monastery, you're often with your colleague monastics for a long time, and sometimes you take them for granted. And that's a bad idea. Never take anyone for granted. Tomorrow, they might be dead. Today is your chance, to kind of treat them well. Tomorrow, you have no idea. So take that opportunity now. So the preference is to the people who are closest to us, and then it's actually quite easy to be kind to those people who are further away. Yeah, we tend to, if you meet someone, more randomly, we tend to be more kind because we don't know them, because we don't have any kind of background or baggage. It actually works quite well. So you treat them with bodily kindness. What does that mean? Well, it means that you just, you don't do any bodily harm towards them. Maybe you kind of, give them a pat on the back, when it's required. You are generous towards them. You have a body language that shows affection. Your body language says a lot about what you feel about others. You look at people's body language, you can see straight away whether they are a bit hostile or not hostile. Although these things are kind of obvious very often. You can feel the mind of the person. You can read their mind just by looking at their body sometimes. And then you are kind both in public and in private. You don't put on a show in public and then in private you say, oh yeah, that terrible person. You are consistent. You have integrity in the way you live your life. That integrity is very important. Otherwise you're not going to make any progress. You always have to do these things. So this is very interesting. So think about ways you can be more kind through your bodily conduct. How can you have a bodily conduct that is kind? Please come first. When you drive in the traffic, allow people to come in. Around the world, people are often very aggressive when they drive. But don't be aggressive. Don't be one of those. If someone wants to come in, let them in from the side road. How much hurry do you have? Can you wait those extra 10 seconds or 20 seconds? And probably you can, right? You can afford that. And that kind of creates harmony. Instead of road rage, you have road kindness. That is going to be a new coinage from now on. Road kindness. We're going to what is kind of a road rage versus road? Maybe kindness is too long. Road metta. I don't know. Whatever it is. We have to coin some of these anti-terms. Road love. Okay, something like that. Yeah, but we get the rough idea anyway. So that's kind of nice. I like road love. So. It's so different from how most people treat each other on the road. And so if we can show the way to others, in these difficult circumstances, let someone through the door, wait for them in the lift. Oh, come in, there's room for one more lift, come in with us. And there's all these little things that we do, in daily life can make such a big difference. And so we kind of have this at the back of your mind all the time. How can I be more kind? What can I do? How can I add value to the other person's life? And if you add value to the other person's life, you're adding value to your own life right there. These things always go together. Real spirituality is about doing something which is good for you and others at the same time. That is how you know it is a spiritual act, because it's good for everyone. And this way we create a good society, a nice society, where people feel that they are looked after and you look after others. And if each one of us can add a little bit of that to our society, it's beautiful. Certainly within the BGF, with your fellow Buddhists, but also to anyone in the world. Doesn't matter what they are, what religion they are, it's completely irrelevant. And you treat people in this way. Whether they are your servant or your boss is kind of irrelevant. They are just people, and everyone likes to be treated with kindness. Okay, next one. Furthermore, a mendicant consistently treats their spiritual companions with verbal kindness, kind words, both in public and in private, and again the same warm-hearted quality. So you treat people with verbal kindness. And this obviously is very significant, because we talk quite a lot. We have to talk quite a lot. That's how we communicate. And that the way we talk can either be a gift to others, or it can be something which is bad for others. And so how we talking with kindness, the 4 kinds of right speech and all of these kind of things, that can affect our relationship enormously. And you feel, when someone talks to you with kindness, you can feel that straight away. It's a different feeling. Some people, they talk and you just feel at ease in their presence because they talk in a nice way. Like when I go to Ajahn Brahm, he always talks in a really nice way. Always kind of encouraging, always positive. The tone of voice is right. Everything is kind of right. And you feel that sense of ease when you're there with someone else. And you have the same possibility of giving that gift to others. By thinking, by being aware of how you speak, being aware of what you're doing. And then doing that in public and in private. Consistently. And you can see here how many possibilities there are, and your emails can be kind of included in your verbal conduct, and so you can see how many possibilities there are when you start thinking like this. There's endless possibilities of being kinder. Furthermore, a mendicant consistently treats their spiritual companions with mental kindness, both in public and in private. So you think kind thoughts about your spiritual companions. This is where it gets very interesting, because the first 2, we get that, but here also thinking kind thoughts about them, not allowing your mind to become negative about the people around you. And if you feel the people are bad, well, then at least you can have compassion, and compassion is also a kind of mental kindness. So either you have compassionate thoughts, or you have thoughts of metta. These are kind of the two things. And this is where the path really starts to make a big difference. Okay, so the first two, we're still kind of it's still fairly superficial, but once you can turn your mind around, that is where it really starts to bite, and it makes a big difference in your spiritual practice. Once the body, speech, and mind kind of come into line with each other, all according to metta and compassion, that is also when meditation becomes possible after that. Before this, meditation is still going to be hard, but once the mind also aligns with that kindness, then meditation, especially the metta meditation, starts to become really possible at that point. So this is a very, very important part of this. So again, we have been talking a lot about the tools for how to do this already. It is about seeing the good qualities in them, building up those good qualities within, reminding yourself of those good qualities again and again, and then you will rejoice in having good spiritual friends like that. You will have a natural metta for those friends because you know that they have good qualities. See those good qualities in everyone around you. Wherever there are good qualities, see them and be happy about that, so you can have more metta. And then when you cannot see any good qualities, or you need to, or you see too many bad ones, well, that is when the compassion comes in. They don't know what they're doing here. They are blind. They are creating so much suffering for themselves. And in this way, all you build up is mental kindness within them. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. Okay. So, any questions or comments?
Good afternoon, Ajahn.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I want to ask about when you say it's hard to convince ourselves out of our habit, let alone convincing others, so they are trapped. And then, are they going to trap forever there? For example, this idea just came across me when you're talking about this topic earlier. But I have to say sorry. Like, for example, I can change if I want to refrain from coffee. What about the other person who can't change drinking coffee the whole day? It's something like an example, just an example. For example, if I can change myself to refrain from coffee, what about the other person who can't change not to drink coffee the whole day, day and night? So are we going to let them trap forever? It's because you are talking about everyone is getting trapped in their own problems and convince them to change. Maybe just now you were talking about the parents, convincing the parents to know about Dhamma.
Right.
So what happens if we can see we can change, but the other person, how are we going to continue to guide them, or are we continue to convince them?
Well, the thing is that very often the way that other people change is different from how we think they change. So, this is one of the things about the Buddha. The Buddha is able to convince a lot of people, like millions of people over a long period of time. And so very often the person who can convince them the best are not kind of family members, but other people very often. And the reason is because the Buddha is not, he does things purely out of compassion, but the reason why we want to convince our family members is because they are family members, not because of compassion as such. If it was purely out of compassion, you would convince a random person on the street. But actually you choose your parents was because of attachments and all these kind of things. That's the reason why. And so very often the right way of convincing others is not the way we think it is. Very often it is by practicing well and doing the right thing. When we give up coffee, then we say, "Wow, look at them! She has given up coffee. Maybe we should do the same." So you just do it. You become an example rather than actually being one who preaches to others. So should you have compassion for others? Again, the idea here is that when people want to change their children or whatever, it is not really compassion in the same kind of way. It is because of attachments that we want to do that, and so that is often the problem, and that is often the issue. So we need to learn that actually, like someone mentioned the other day, that everyone has been our family members at some time during samsaric existence. So, whether you choose your mother in this life or in the past, that was the difference. Still your mother, in a certain way, yeah? So why should you choose your present mother? Actually, don't choose any of them. Just look after yourself. And then while you look after yourself, you will inspire the most people possible afterwards. So I know it's easy to say this, and it's kind of maybe a bit unfair because, in this life, after all, we do have a family, and of course we should give them priority because they have looked after us. But the way to give them priority is a bit different from what we think. To take my own case, I became a Buddhist monk, and my parents were not happy with that. They were very kind of, what are you going to do? What did we do wrong in our upbringing? You become a Buddhist monk. What is wrong with you? And if I had been born in Thailand, it wouldn't have been a problem. They say, okay, please go and become a monk. But I still became a monk. And after a while, they started to realize, actually, it was a good idea to become a monk, right? And this is kind of the thing. You just do things that you know are right, and then somehow other people come along in the slipstream of that. They kind of get dragged along in a sense. I didn't try so much to convince them. I just did it. And I think that is often the right approach.
Thank you. Ajahn, regarding the four Brahma Vihara, is it necessary with the sequence Metta, Karuna, Mudita, and Upekkha? Or it can... Because I find that Karuna is easier to practice for my case.
Okay, yeah. Good, practice Karuna then, yeah. Be careful with the downsides. Make sure you don't start to feel sad or depressed because you see too much suffering. So watch out for the downside. But if you're able to do it in a positive way and it gives rise to good feelings, then go for it. Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be in that sequence, but I think that is kind of the ideal sequence probably. So if you feel that the karuna becomes too heavy, it doesn't lead to enough lightness in the mind or whatever, then you can also try to add a bit of metta to it as well. And upekkha is the most difficult one. But sometimes people say, I just have upekkha all the time. But often it's not real upekkha, it's kind of a fake upekkha. And so that for that reason we have to it's very profound and difficult to practice that upekkha properly without it becoming indifference or some other kind of silly reaction. Yeah.
Ajahn, I have a question about upekkha. Is it like a middle point between aversion and desire? Like you're not caught in between desire and you're also not trying to run away from aversion?
Yeah, you can say it is a middle point. So upekkha comes in many different levels. The kind of most basic level is that level where you don't have any attraction or aversion, a kind of middle way, and that is kind of part of the upekkha of sense restraint, where you understand that you don't get too attracted to things in the world. But then that upekkha can become very profound. The upekkha of the very deep samadhi and these kind of things, where you're not attracted to anything really, even the happiness of the jhanas and things like that. Even that you have a kind of a neutral view of. That's much more difficult, but this is very profound kinds of happiness. So even even towards any kind of happiness or suffering in the world, you kind of have this ability just to stand back and look on without being attracted. And that's why that comes after the third and the second jhana, because in those jhanas you have piti sukha. Once you go beyond that, piti sukha, that's when you get that perfect equanimity, which is an even higher kind of happiness. It comes in many degrees, but it starts with the ability to just not having desire, as you say, middle way. Yeah.